Hello, I'm Irma Baker. Welcome to our show. We're sponsored by the Mature Services RSVP Volunteer Program, and we're glad to have them as a sponsor. We're glad to have you tuning in today. We like to think of our show like a kaleidoscope. We're bringing you interesting individuals, organizations, and activities in our viewing area. And today's guest is a brand new author to the mystery scene. Just after these messages, we'll be back to meet Shelley Costa.
RSVP of Summit County has been making a difference in our community since 1972. RSVP volunteers are increasing the quality of life by participating in programs and organizations that provide important services to the community. RSVP matches personal interests and skills with opportunities to serve. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Welcome back. Our guest today is Shelley Costa, and Shelley's first mystery novel came out just a few months ago, and it has the wonderful title of You Can Only Die Once. Shelley, it's wonderful to have you with us.
It's wonderful to be here, Irma. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I have to say that title really caught me right away. You Can Only Die Once. Now, I know, because I've read the book, that this has to do with an Italian restaurant.
Right.
Now, tell me, just how did that happen?
Well, it wasn't originally an Italian restaurant.
Oh, you're telling us some secrets here.
I'm telling you some secrets here. It was originally a tap dance academy set in Greenwich Village in New York City, and I just wrote 2 chapters in a cozy mystery subgenre, and my agent said this isn't going to fly. So we kicked around some other ideas, and one of my ideas was, what about a cable TV Italian cooking show? And he said no to the cable TV part for various reasons, but he said, let's talk about the Italian cooking. So actually, Irma, it was my agent who shaped what became the first book in this series. And I transferred my tap dancing plots to a totally different setting, and I needed to move it out of Manhattan, more into the kind of fictional community where my readers would feel really comfortable.
Well, I know I certainly felt comfortable at the Miracolo restaurant as I was reading it. And your main character, Eve Angelata, she really has her hands full. Besides the restaurant, she has that zany cast of characters. Tell us a little bit about them.
Good. She is about 32, and she is a former dancer who broke her leg, and that totally sidelined her dance career. But the restaurant in what I call Quaker Hills, Pennsylvania, it's about 40 minutes north of Philadelphia, has been in her family for 3 generations. So she needed a job. And this was a difficult decision because she has a grandmother she loves but who's difficult to work with. And the grandmother, Maria Pia, owns the restaurant. But Eve turned up as head chef, and she's an amateur sleuth, and working with her, it's totally an Angelata family production, basically. Working with her are her cousins, Landon, who's her sous chef, and Chuchu Bacigalupo, another cousin who is the maitre d'. And then, of course, Maria Pia, the grandmother, is ever present and has a lot to say about everything.
Well, the relationship between Eve and her Nana is just so rife with humor.
Good.
And family relationships. I think every family has some kind of relationship like that. But the plot of this, I mean, you don't usually think of grandmothers as having boyfriends.
which is just what I wanted. I like that, that it felt different to me and would break some stereotypes and be something outside the norm. Yeah.
Well, certainly having the boyfriend get murdered,
Yeah.
that, and I'm not giving away anything here because
No.
that happens early in the book.
Right, very early on. Right. And the joke, one of the jokes is Eve doesn't even know who he is. So the grandma has quite a little secret life going on that doesn't include some of her younger relatives at all. And yeah, I'd say within the first couple of chapters, Eve discovers the body on the kitchen of the restaurant, on the floor of the kitchen in the restaurant. And she doesn't know who it is until one of the police detectives essentially produces the victim's ID.
And that came as a big surprise to her.
Came as a very big surprise to her, and then she needed to break the news to her grandmother that this is what has happened to Arlen, and if murder mysteries can be funny, and I always try to find murder mysteries to read that are humorous because I really enjoy that. I think this is kind of rollicking and fun, and it's like the lighter side of murder.
Murder is not funny, but the approach to it can be. And
right.
Certainly having Grandma in jail.
Right. Well, she is arrested for the crime, and that, of course, brings out La Familia, that, you know, with the closeness, and it's like they circle the wagons, and Eve and her cousins, despite the complex relationship they have with their grandmother, including the staff at the restaurant, the wait staff, they get very busy trying to clear her name.
Eventually they do. I mean, we are talking about traditional mystery,
Right.
amateur sleuths, and that is a very popular genre or subgenre of the mystery right now.
Right.
And you've been writing mysteries. I know this is your debut mystery fiction novel.
Right.
But you have been published before, you've been active in the nonfiction area. How did you get into writing to begin with?
Irma, since I was like 5 years old, as soon as I could write, I was writing. And I sort of graduated from stories about Nancy Ann the duck, and about at the age of 10, I wrote something called The Return of the Doctor, and I think that was my first mystery. I've had kind of a parallel academic career, and I've always gravitated toward mystery, and I think in my own personal history there are reasons for that. It's what I deeply love. I love what I like about mystery is it's both knowable and unknowable. Even when you have a solution, there's still everything else in the context about what we can't anticipate about human behavior or motives. And I really like that. So yes, I sold my first story. It was not a mystery when I was 22, and I was just graduating from Rutgers. And I went into literary fiction and was published there in short fiction for a while. And I kind of dabbled in playwriting. But by the time I finished my doctorate in American literature, I realized all I'm reading now are mysteries. And I think there's some pretty fine writing in the mystery genre. And I felt like it's where my future lay as a writer.
It's very interesting to hear you talk about the literary value of mystery fiction, because I know the subgenres in general, some literary types, if I could call them that, kind of look down their nose at that. What do you feel about that?
The literary types looking down their noses. Okay, I'll be very frank. I think a lot of contemporary literary fiction is a lot about style, and what I like about mystery fiction when it's really well done is the style, the prose style can be really wonderful, but because by definition that it's a mystery, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of the plot. I like story, and to me, character is all wrapped up with story. Story comes out of character. I don't understand why literary writers look down their noses at mystery writers. I think they just haven't read widely enough in mystery.
Well, I know that I've gotten just to the point where mystery is about all that I read.
Yeah.
I love the mystery novel. And I can remember when I was just in grade school, and of course the libraries had their summer reading programs, and the librarians were always trying to get me to read other things. But I would read the mysteries. I'd go home from the library with a stack of mysteries, and that's what I read today. I love them. I think that they're entertaining,
Right.
and they are also informative. And certainly you do that in yours.
Thanks. I was informing myself along the way. I completely agree with you. As I say, it's virtually all I read anymore. I feel incredibly satisfied by the content of well-written mysteries. And I think what I also like is that there's a sense of crime and punishment. There's a sense of the novelist John Gardner once said that mystery fiction is at heart moral fiction. And I think that's really true. I'm very interested in the pursuit of, frankly, of both good and evil. And the sense, especially in traditional mysteries, that that we can make a difference. We can pursue wrongdoing of this sort and bring it to justice.
That makes a big difference, and I'm sure that there are viewers who are watching our program today who are saying, right on, that's it. Finally, somebody's vindicating reading for entertainment,
Right.
and not reading because it's going to somehow improve you.
I don't think reading for entertainment necessarily means it's fluff and that it's superficial or mediocre at all. I am very entertained by good writing that moves well. I like mysteries have a real narrative drive. I like that. I like the depth of characterization in well-done mysteries. And that's what entertains me. And there's a range. I can read something I know I can get through in just a few hours and have a good time doing that. But probably like a lot of your viewers, I like to get immersed in a world. And I think good mystery writers give you a world.
I think that that is what makes the traditional mystery so popular and really holds our interest, because so many of the traditional mysteries are mystery series.
Yes.
And when you think back to Agatha Christie with the Hercule Poirot and the Miss Marple, we wanted more and more and more of those characters.
Yes.
But now you actually started, well, I can't say you started, but one of the books that you've published previous to this had to do with mystery, but it was not fiction.
No.
It was about Edgar Allan Poe. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you how I got that job. I'm an active member of Mystery Writers of America because I'd published mystery short fiction. And I'm on the listserv. So one day in maybe 2006, I was going through the emails, and an editor, who's also a member, posted, and she said, I've just gotten approval to acquire a book on Edgar Allan Poe. Anybody out there have the credentials? Well, I sat on this for a couple of days because it was like June and I had the summer ahead of me, and I thought, okay, is this how I want to spend my summer vacation? And I thought, absolutely, it's how I want to spend my summer vacation. I knew I had the credentials. A 19th century American lit is my special area. And I have taught Poe, and I liked Poe, and I felt I could do a really creditable job with this work. So I got the contract, and originally it was supposed to be 101 things you didn't know about Edgar Allan Poe. Well, there are more than 101 things that, anybody doesn't know about him. And I did the manuscript and got it in on time. I like deadlines, and they said, well, there's good news and bad news. Okay. The good news is we've liked it so much, we're bumping it up to our flagship series, The Everything Guide to Edgar Allan Poe. The bad news is we need another 100 pages. And I thought, all right. So I was a little hard pressed to find those other 100 pages, but they said you can even put in some of his stories. So Edgar helped me make the word count. It was a wonderful experience. At that point, I realized I have a book. It wasn't a novel, and by gum, I still wanted to be a novelist. But it was a book, and for people who are aspiring writers in your audience, everything helps open that window a little higher. And I know I got a look from agents and editors because I've published mystery short fiction and because I had the Poe book. Everything counts. I was really, really sad when I was done writing the Poe book because I felt I had come to understand him working so intensively in the research. And the reason they acquired the book at that particular point in time was that they were timing it to appear with a Hollywood biopic, right? I thought, oh, this is great, a Hollywood film on Edgar Allan Poe. And it was would be directed, and the screenplay was going to be written by Sylvester Stallone. I thought, okay, this is a surprise. Apparently Stallone has been incredibly interested in Edgar Allan Poe for over 30 years. And I thought, well, this is just wonderful. I actually sent him a copy of the book. Never heard anything. Because I felt like I was very careful to bust some of the stereotypes about Poe. Partly the stereotypes are what have made him a cultural icon, and he's probably one of the very few literary cultural icons we have. Maybe Mark Twain is another. But you know his reputation. He's a madman, he's a drug addict, he's all these things. And in my research, I discovered that, none of that was so. So it was an education for me. It was a good fit. And I felt like I drew close to somebody who's been gone for, well over 100 years.
Certainly, Edgar Allan Poe is someone that anyone, even if they weren't an English major or into reading or reading the classics, they're familiar with the name. So it is, when you say a literary cultural icon, he certainly is. And what a great opportunity that was for you to break into the book publishing.
Right.
But you also write short stories.
I do.
And you've been published a number of times in Alfred Hitchcock magazine.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the difference between short stories and novels.
Well, I know there are people who are novelists who envy short story writers because they feel it's harder to write a short story than a novel. I find the opposite to be true. I find when I'm on and I'm cooking, and if you want to call it inspired, I can write what I feel is a good mystery short story in about a week. Obviously, you can't do that with a novel. What are some of the differences? I've had to work at enlarging. I have started out as a short story writer. And I find that my dialogue, for instance, has tended to be very terse. It'll be a line, another line, another line. And my editor said, you need to enlarge this more. Give us some of the things they're doing. So a novel is the creation of a whole world, basically. And people want those details. A short story, partly I laugh because a short story just has to be plausible. And the mystery doesn't have to go into terrible depth. It just, you're in, you're out, and it has to make sense on some level. But there's a lot to be said about the pacing of a short story. That kind of, not speed, but brevity that you have to change if you're going to make the transition into writing novels. So as I say, I learned with something new with the Edgar Allan Poe book, and I'm continuing to learn in this transition from being a short story writer to being a novelist. I don't think I'll ever stop writing short stories because they fulfill, I go into some kind of dark areas with my short stories that satisfy my need to write about those things. But I like funny mystery novels. I like others too. But I think I'm kind of well suited to a lighter hand when it comes to the mystery novel.
Now, if people want to learn more about what you're writing and what you're doing, you have a website, don't you?
I do.
What is that?
It's www.shelleycosta.com. That's SHELLEYCOSTA.com. It's the place where you can get more contact information. I try to keep it semi-updated with news. Gives you a little bit about my background and now about this book. So.
And you have another book coming out too.
I do. Book 2 in the series. I now learned, I thought it was coming out in December. I learned through Amazon it's coming out in February. That's fine. It's the follow-up, the second book in what I hope will be a lengthier series than 2 books. Can I tell you a little of the backstory about this? The title was an interesting little odyssey, finding the title for that book. And I have to tell you, my agent gave me the title for the first book. It was not my thought. We had a great time, agent's wife, me, my husband, coming up with titles for an Italian restaurant mystery series. And his was chosen for the first book. The second book was going to be called, and at the back of book 1, there is a teaser chapter from book 2 called, it was going to be called The City That Never Sleeps. Obviously, this is a play on The City That Never Sleeps. But the associate publisher at Simon & Schuster, who I think heads up the sales, was saying this is not playing well with the salespeople. And you either get the reference or you don't. And my husband said it still doesn't work even if you get the reference. So we knew we had to retitle it. And now book 2 is, this was my title, is going to be